Welcome to Built Through Time, where we unpack fascinating stories from history and explore their lasting impact. Today we're setting sail and then riding the rails into the incredible and sometimes controversial world of Cornelius Vanderbilt. You probably know him as the Commodore, maybe associated with, massive wealth or those grand mansions. But his journey, starting from really humble beginnings to becoming one of the richest Americans ever.
It's quite a story.
And the legacy, the family story afterwards is just as dramatic. Truly remarkable stuff.
Absolutely. We'll be looking at, his early life, those fierce business tactics on the water. Then we'll sort of chug along into his railroad empire, which was groundbreaking. And we have to talk about the Gilded Age context, right? How people saw figures like Vanderbilt back then.
Right, the whole robber baron versus captain of industry debate.
Exactly, and how they shaped America's transportation infrastructure, which is huge. And then, that fascinating, almost unbelievable story of the fortune itself, how it was built with such grit. And then, how it was handled, or maybe mishandled, by the descendants.
Okay, so let's dive into this. It's an epic tale, really. Ambition, innovation, and what happens when just immense wealth meets changing times. So let's unpack this. Where does this journey really kick off? It wasn't a boardroom, was it? It started on the water.
Right, on the water. Young Cornelius Vanderbilt.
Tell us about those early years.
Well, what's fascinating, I think, is just how humble it all was. He was born in 1794, Staten Island, New York. Descendant of Dutch settlers, parents were farmers. His father also ran a ferry, basically carrying produce and goods between Staten Island and Manhattan, a sailing vessel.
Okay, so he grew up around boats.
Absolutely. Young Cornelius worked with his dad, had a little bit of schooling, but not much. By his teens, he was already running his own boat.
A periauger.
A periauger. Yeah, it's a kind of shallow draft boat, good for coastal stuff. He started transporting cargo, built up a small fleet, even learned about ship design. Pretty entrepreneurial from the get-go.
So starting small but thinking big already. How did he get that nickname, the Commodore? That sounds pretty grand.
It does, doesn't it? It's a U.S. Navy title, technically. He earned it through just being incredibly competitive, aggressively so. He worked for a guy named Thomas Gibbons as a ferry captain, learned the steamship business, which was just taking off.
Ah, steamships. The next big thing then.
Exactly. And by the late 1820s, Vanderbilt went out on his own, became totally dominant, engaged in these brutal fare wars. Get this, his rivals would actually pay him huge amounts of money just to not compete with them on certain routes.
Wow. Protection money almost.
Kind of, yeah. This really ruthless approach defined him. Made him a lot of enemies, but also, a ton of money.
Okay, so steamships were his first empire. But then he shifts. Railroads. That feels like a huge leap. What drove that?
He just saw where things were going. Incredible foresight. In the early 1850s, think California gold rush time.
Right.
Before any transcontinental railroad existed, he launched this super successful steamship service, New York to San Francisco, but via Nicaragua.
Nicaragua, there.
Faster route than going around Cape Horn or even through Panama at the time. He was making over $1 million a year from that alone.
Which is what, like $26 million today? Huge.
Huge money. But even with that success, by the 1860s, he saw railroads were the real future. So he made this incredibly bold move. He sold all his ships, everything, to focus entirely on building a railroad empire.
Just like that. Moved all his chips.
Pretty much, all in on rails.
And this is where we get into some of those legendary Wall Street battles, isn't it? Like the Erie Railroad War.
Oh, definitely. That's a classic. 1868, he's up against these notorious traders, Jim Fisk and Jay Gould, fighting for control of the Erie Railroad.
How'd that play out?
Well, Vanderbilt teamed up with another guy, Daniel Drew, to buy up shares. But Gould and Fisk just started illegally issuing more shares, watering down the stock, they called it.
So creating shares out of thin air.
Essentially, yes. Vanderbilt kept buying, totally unaware he was being played. They milked him for about $7 million.
$7 million back then?
Yeah.
That's over $1 billion today, right?
Easily. It was a massive scandal. He eventually got most of it back when the illegal stuff came to light, but it shows you the kind of environment he operated in.
But he wasn't deterred.
Not at all. He learned, adapted, moved on. He then focused on things like building Manhattan's Grand Central Depot.
Ah, the forerunner to Grand Central Terminal.
Exactly. Opened in 1871.
Yeah.
A huge statement of his power in the railroad world.
So looking at all this, what does it mean for America's development? How did his actions actually shape the country's infrastructure, its economy?
Well, his impact was pivotal, really central. He wasn't just about making money on the water, Owning the New York Central Railroad let him consolidate all these fragmented, inefficient rail lines. He created a more unified, standardized network, which meant travel and shipping goods became faster, cheaper, much more reliable. This was absolutely crucial for America's industrialization. Moving raw materials, finished goods, it greased the wheels of the economy. Freight rail, which was his big focus later on, has been a driver of U.S. growth for nearly 200 years now. His work laid a lot of that foundation.
We know railroads were critical, especially, during and after the Civil War. The North's logistics were a major advantage. His shift into that industry seems incredibly strategic in hindsight.
Oh, absolutely. It was perfect timing, whether fully intentional or partly intuitive. The period after the Civil War was the golden age for railroads. The network just exploded, went from about 35,000 miles of track to a peak of over 254,000 miles by 1916. Vanderbilt's relentless focus on efficiency, on connecting lines, helped build the kind of corporate economy that really defined the U.S. He wasn't just building his fortune. He was shaping how America moved, how supply chains worked. You could even argue he anticipated the kind of deregulation and market focus we saw much later, like with the Staggers Rail Act in 1980.
The Staggers Act, remind me.
That was the act that finally let railroads have more freedom to set rates based on demand, encouraging huge reinvestment in the network. Vanderbilt was pushing for efficiency and market responsiveness way back in the 1860s and 70s.
Okay, so his impact is undeniable. But let's talk about that fortune. Over $100 million when he died in 1877. Some estimates put that at $185 billion, maybe even $330 billion in today's money.
Yeah, staggering numbers. Richest person in the world at the time. More wealth than the entire U.S. Treasury had.
That kind of wealth inevitably brings debate, especially during the Gilded Age. Was he a robber baron exploiting the system or a captain of industry building the nation?
And that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It goes right to the heart of understanding that era. Robber barons, that label, was for industrialists seen as, ruthless monopolists, maybe unethical, exploiting workers.
Right.
Captains of industry were the heroes, celebrated for their drive, their innovation, building the economy. Vanderbilt, well, he arguably fits both descriptions at different times.
How so?
Those fair wars, the Erie Railroad battle, pretty ruthless tactics. That smells like robber baron.
Okay.
But then you look at him consolidating railroads, making transportation efficient, cheaper, connecting the country. That sounds much more like a captain of industry. Creating value, building infrastructure, it's complex.
And personally, with all that money, was he living like a king? We think of Gilded Age opulence.
Interestingly, no. Not really. Compared to later tycoons like Carnegie or Rockefeller, Vanderbilt was known for being quite frugal, almost Spartan. He didn't build those enormous mansions his descendants became famous for. He lived relatively simply, considering his wealth.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah. And philanthropy. He made basically one major donation, $1 million in 1873 to start Vanderbilt University in Nashville.
Just the one big gift.
Pretty much. Very different from someone like Andrew Carnegie, who became famously philanthropic later, giving away almost his entire fortune for libraries, education, peace initiatives.
Right, Carnegie Hall, the libraries. A very different approach to legacy.
Totally different. Vanderbilt seemed focused almost entirely on building and maintaining the business empire.
Okay, so if the Commodore himself was so frugal, what on earth happened to that colossal fortune? We always hear that phrase, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. But the Vanderbilt seemed like the textbook case. Old money to no money.
That's where the story takes this incredibly dramatic turn. Cornelius left almost all of it, like 95%, to just one son, William Henry Vanderbilt.
Why him?
He thought William Henry was the only one capable of actually managing the empire he'd built. And initially, he was right. William Henry actually doubled the fortune, reached something like $200 million by the time he died in 1885.
Doubled it. So the decline didn't start with him.
Not directly with his business sense, no. But the problem, reportedly, was that he didn't quite instill that same work ethics or financial prudence in his kids. He had 8 children.
Okay. So the next generation. That's where things started to go sideways.
That seems to be the consensus. There were a few key factors. First, the fortune just got spread thinner and thinner with each generation, more descendants to divide it among.
Makes sense.
Plus, you had inheritance taxes becoming more significant over time. But crucially, many of the later Vanderbilts just didn't have the Commodore's business sense or his frugality.
They weren't builders like he was.
Not in the same way, no. Some got into high-risk ventures that failed, made bad investments. But the biggest drain by far was the lifestyle.
Spending.
Oh, the spending. Prodigious spending on enormous mansions, the famous Newport cottages, Fifth Avenue palaces, plus lavish parties, yachts, art collections. It just accelerated the decline dramatically.
So by the mid-20th century,
The Vanderbilt star had definitely dimmed. Within about 50 years, maybe 70 years after the Commodore's death, that vast fortune had, for the most part, just evaporated.
and those magnificent mansions, the Breakers, the Triple Palace, they became symbols of that extravagance. What happened to them?
Many met rather sad ends, architecturally speaking. Some were sold off, some became museums, but many were just demolished.
Demolished. Really?
Yes, like the Cornelius Vanderbilt second mansion on 57th Street in Manhattan, 130 rooms, biggest private home in the city, stood for less than 50 years before being torn down in 1927 for the Bergdorf Goodman store.
Incredible.
William Henry's Triple Palace on Fifth Avenue, another huge place, mostly gone by 1949. The Breakers in Newport is a museum now, run by the Preservation Society.
At least that one survived.
It did, but there was even drama there recently. Vanderbilt descendants who still lived in part of it were evicted in 2018 over disputes and building conditions. Kind of a poignant symbol of the fading influence.
Wow. Are any still standing and privately owned?
One major one is the Biltmore Estate in North Carolina, built by George Washington Vanderbilt II. It's still the largest privately owned home in the U.S., and it's still owned by Vanderbilt descendants. So one branch managed to hold on to that piece of the legacy.
So despite the main fortune disappearing, the name obviously lives on. And some descendants have made their own way, haven't they?
Absolutely. The family name still carries weight, even if the Gilded Age fortune is gone. And yes, several members have built successful careers completely independently.
Like Gloria Vanderbilt.
Exactly. She was a well-known artist, fashion designer, author, built her own brand.
And her son, Anderson Cooper.
Right, the journalist and TV anchor. He's spoken very openly about the family history, the inheritance, and, the importance of making your own way, working hard.
To the Elephant, the actor, is also a descendant, I believe.
That's right. So the lineage continues, even if the connection to that original massive wealth is largely historical now.
So, wrapping this up, the story of Cornelius Vanderbilt is just extraordinary, unbelievable ambition, incredible success, building an empire that literally shaped America's infrastructure.
Definitely.
But it's also this powerful cautionary tale, isn't it? About wealth, about legacy, about how hard it is to sustain something like that across generations.
It really makes you think, doesn't it, about what wealth actually is. Is it truly built through time if it vanishes within a couple of generations? The Vanderbilt saga highlights that creating immense wealth is one thing, but keeping it requires maybe something more. Strategic management, yes. Financial prudence, absolutely. But maybe also a shared family vision, a purpose beyond just the money itself.
That's a fascinating point.
It raises that question, what does it really take for a family's legacy, not just the money, but the impact, the name, to genuinely stand the test of time? And what lessons are there for anyone thinking about legacy today?
A powerful thought indeed. Something to mull over. Thank you for listening to Built Through Time.